Adisa woke the next morning with a sense of calm that had eluded him for years. For once, the weight of his secret did not hang over him like a dark cloud. As he stepped outside to tend to his crops, the sunlight seemed a little brighter, the air a little lighter. He had spent so many years fearing rejection that he hadn't dared imagine what it would feel like to be accepted, until now. Kihind had changed everything. For the next few weeks, Adisa and Kihind grew even closer. They worked together as usual, but the air between them was different now. Where there had once been unspoken tension, there was now a deep sense of understanding. Adisa felt freer, more at ease in her presence. Kihind's acceptance had allowed him to let down the walls he had spent years building around himself, and for the first time, he allowed himself to dream of a future with her. But life in Oak Iroko was never free of gossip. Though Adisa and Kihind shared something special, the village's eyes were always watching, always whispering. The closeness between them had not gone unnoticed, and soon the rumors began to spread once again. "Did you hear about Adisa and the city woman?" a woman at the market whispered to her companion as Adisa passed by one afternoon. "They say she doesn't know about his curse yet," another woman chimed in. "She'll run away like all the others once she finds out." Adisa pretended not to hear them, but the sting of their words lingered. It wasn't the first time he had been the subject of village gossip, but now it felt different. Now, it wasn't just about him, Kihind was involved too. And as much as he tried to push the whispers aside, he couldn't shake the fear that they might get to her. The gossip grew worse as Adisa and Kihind continued to spend time together. People talked behind their backs, speculating about how long it would be before Kihind left the village, before she realized the truth about Adisa and fled like the others. The women, in particular, were ruthless, spreading rumors that painted Adisa as a man unworthy of love. Despite the growing tension in the village, Kihind remained undeterred. She continued her work with the same dedication and focus, and her relationship with Adisa deepened with each passing day. But even she couldn't ignore the whispers forever. One evening, after a long day of work, Adisa and Kihind sat together on the veranda of her guest house, as they often did. The night was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of rain, and for a while, they simply sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars blink into view. But the peace between them was short-lived. Kihind's expression grew serious as she glanced over at Adisa. "I heard the women at the market talking today," she said quietly, her voice laced with frustration. "They were saying things about you, about us." Adisa's stomach tightened, but he tried to keep his voice steady. "What did they say?" "They said you've been cursed," Kihind replied, her eyes searching his face. "That your size has scared off every woman you've ever been with. They said I'd leave too, once I found out." Adisa clenched his jaw, the familiar sense of dread settling in his chest. He had hoped the village gossip wouldn't reach Kihind, but of course, that had been naive. This was Oak Iroko, after all, nothing stayed secret for long. "I told you," Adisa said softly, his voice heavy with the weight of the past. "That's what they've always said about me. The women, they left because they were afraid. And now they think you leave too." Kihind frowned, her expression one of anger and defiance. "They don't know me," she said firmly. "They don't know us." Adisa appreciated her strength, but he couldn't help the lingering doubt that gnawed at him. He had seen it happen before, women who had promised to stay, only to leave the moment they felt uncomfortable. Kihind might not care about the gossip now, but what if the pressure became too much? What if, one day, she realized that being with him wasn't worth the cost? "I don't care about what they say," Kihind continued, her voice softening. "You told me the truth, Adisa, and that's all that matters. You trusted me enough to share something deeply personal, and I'm not going to let a bunch of small-minded people change how I feel about you. Adisa looked at her, his heart swelling with both gratitude and fear. He wanted to believe her, wanted to trust in the bond they had built. But the fear of losing her still lingered, a shadow that refused to be banished. You're stronger than you know, Kihan said, taking his hand in hers. You've carried this burden alone for so long, but you don't have to anymore. I'm here, and I'm not leaving. Her words, filled with conviction and tenderness, settled something deep within Adisa. For the first time, he began to believe that maybe, just maybe, this could be different. Maybe Kihan really would stay. Maybe the gossip didn't matter as much as he had feared. But as their relationship grew stronger, so did the pressure from the village. The whispers followed them everywhere, at the market, in the fields, even at the village square during meetings with the chief. Some villagers openly disapproved of their relationship, while others watched with morbid curiosity, waiting for the inevitable fallout. Adisa tried to ignore the mounting tension, focusing instead on the work they were doing together. The irrigation project was progressing well, and with Kihan's expertise, they had made significant strides toward increasing the farm's yield. But the weight of the village's judgment was always there, lurking in the background, waiting to rear its ugly head. One day, as Adisa and Kihan walked through the village on their way back from the fields, a group of women standing near the market stall began whispering loudly enough for them to hear. Look at him, walking around like he doesn't know what's coming, one of the women said, her voice dripping with disdain. That city woman will leave him just like the others. It's only a matter of time. Kihan's grip on Adisa's hand tightened, her jaw set in anger. But Adisa didn't react. He had heard it all before. As they continued walking, Kihan finally broke the silence. I hate this, she muttered, her voice trembling with frustration. I hate how they talk about you, about us. They don't even know you. Adisa sighed, his shoulders heavy with the weight of years of judgment. It's always been this way. They'll never stop. They are wrong, Kihan said fiercely. You're not cursed, Adisa. You're one of the best men I've ever known. Her words were meant to comfort, but the truth was that Adisa had lived under the shadow of the village's whispers for so long that he wasn't sure how to live without them. Even now, with Kihan by his side, the doubt still gnawed at him. What if she changed her mind? What if the pressure became too much? But despite the growing tension, Adisa found solace in Kihan's unwavering support. She stood by him even as the village's disapproval grew louder, and for the first time, Adisa began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as alone as he had once thought. Still, the fear of losing her never fully disappeared. The gossip might not have driven her away yet, but how long could they withstand the judgment of an entire village? How long before the weight of the whispers became too much to bear? As Adisa and Kihan faced the mounting pressure together, they would soon realize that the greatest challenge to their relationship wasn't the gossip itself, but their ability to weather the storm it brought with it. Despite the growing hostility from the village, Adisa and Kihan's bond only deepened. The whispers, while hurtful, seemed less important when they were together. For every doubt that gnawed at Adisa's heart, there was a quiet moment of reassurance from Kihan. She stood firm in her support, determined to show the village that their love was stronger than the gossip that followed them. The irrigation project, now nearing completion, had already begun to transform Okiroko's landscape. Where the land had once been dry and difficult to cultivate, the newly installed irrigation system brought fresh water to Adisa's fields, allowing his crops to flourish. It wasn't just his farm that benefited, the entire village had begun to see the result of their hard work. As more farmers saw the improvements, their respect for Adisa grew, and the whispers about his curse began to quiet, at least in some corners. Still, not everyone was willing to let go of the gossip that had clung to Adisa for years. The women who had rejected him in the past, along with their families, continued to stir up rumors. Some even suggested that Kihane's presence in the village was temporary, that she would leave as soon as the project was finished, abandoning Adisa like all the others. But Kihane remained undeterred. In fact, her commitment to Ok Iroko only grew stronger. She had fallen in love not just with Adisa, but with the land itself, and she saw potential in the village that went beyond the irrigation project. "I want to stay," Kihane said one evening as they sat together under the stars, the night air warm and fragrant with the scent of the nearby cocoa trees. "I've been thinking about it for a while, and I don't want to go back to Ibadan. There's so much we can do here, Adisa. The work we've started, this is just the beginning." Adisa stared at her, his heart swelling with emotions he had been too afraid to express. He had always feared that Kihane would eventually leave, that her life in the city would pull her away from him, but here she was, telling him that she wanted to stay. He had dreamed of a future with her, but he had never dared to believe it could be real. "You want to stay here?" he asked, his voice filled with wonder. Kihane nodded, her eyes shining with conviction. "Yes. I want to help this village grow, to bring in new techniques and modernize the farming. And I want to be with you, Adisa. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in years, Adisa allowed himself to fully embrace the hope that had been growing inside him since Kihane's arrival. He had spent so long believing that he was destined to be alone, that his size had cursed him to a life of isolation. But now, with Kihane by his side, he began to see a different future, one where he could build a life filled with love and purpose. The next morning, Adisa walked through his fields with a renewed sense of pride. The crops were thriving, the soil rich and fertile, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was truly in control of his destiny. With Kihane's help, they had already accomplished so much, but the future held even greater possibilities. As they continued to work together, Adisa and Kihane began to make plans for expanding the farm. With the success of the irrigation project, they wanted to introduce new crops and bring in modern farming techniques that would not only increase their yield but also provide jobs for more people in the village. Their vision was ambitious, but they both believed in it. However, the village's approval was still far from guaranteed. While some villagers had begun to respect Adisa for his success, others remained skeptical, particularly the elders who clung to the old ways of farming. They saw Adisa and Kihane's modern ideas as a threat to tradition, and they weren't shy about voicing their concerns. One afternoon, as Adisa and Kihane presented their plans to the village council, the tension in the air was palpable. The elders, led by Chief Akambi, listened in silence as Kihane explained the benefits of expanding the farm and introducing new crops like tomatoes and peppers. She spoke with confidence, laying out a detailed plan for how the village could thrive by embracing change. But when she finished, the room remained quiet. Chief Akambi, a tall, imposing man with a sharp gaze, leaned forward, his hands resting on his cane. "Your ideas are ambitious," he said slowly, his voice measured. "But we are a village that respects tradition. The ways of our ancestors have sustained us for generations. What you propose may bring prosperity, but at what cost? Are we to forget who we are?" Adisa felt a knot of frustration form in his chest. He had anticipated resistance from the elders, but it still stung to hear them dismiss the hard work he and Kihane had put into the project. He opened his mouth to speak, but Kihane placed a hand on his arm, silently asking him to let her handle it. "With all due respect, Chief," Kihind said calmly. Tradition has its place, but so does progress. The world is changing, and if we want Ok Iroko to thrive, we need to adapt. The irrigation project has already shown that modernization can work alongside tradition. We are not asking you to abandon your ways, we are asking you to consider how they can evolve to meet the needs of the future. Chief Akambi's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, one of the younger council members, Ayatiti, spoke up. Kihind is right, she said, her voice firm. Look at what they've already done with the irrigation system. My farm has seen better yields in the past month than in the last 2 years. If we don't adapt, we'll be left behind. We need to think about the next generation. Her words seemed to shift the mood in the room. Some of the elders nodded in agreement, while others remained silent, their faces etched with uncertainty. Chief Akambi glanced around at his fellow council members before finally nodding. We will consider your proposal, he said, his tone cautious but not dismissive. But know this, change must come slowly, and with respect for our past. It wasn't a full endorsement, but it was a start. As Adisa and Kihind left the meeting, Adisa couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. They had made progress, and while there was still resistance, he believed that, in time, the village would come to see the value of what they were doing. As they walked back to the farm, Kihind turned to Adisa with a smile. We did it. Adisa chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. We are not there yet, but it's a good start. Kihind's smile widened. It's more than a good start, Adisa. We're building something real here, something that will last. Adisa looked at her, his heart swelling with love and admiration.